And on commodities market updates, we're being joined by Julieta Denuga, Head of Treasury at Financial Derivatives Company. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. So, the Federal Executive Council has just approved the NNPC acquisition of a 20% stake in Dangote Refineries. In June, when NNPC first made this known, there were concerns and questions about, okay, the NNPC is looking at buying a stake in a private.
Why should they even be doing that?
Refinery when we still have, our refineries just lying fallow.
Okay,
What do you think?
I think it's all shades of good to a large extent to Nigeria that the federal government is taking a 20% stake in the Dangote refinery because it's a way of securing our energy supply. You know that Dangote is a private entrepreneur. And a private entrepreneur is purely a profit-making venture. So the hand of the government in it, to a large extent, is going to ensure that security of energy to a large extent. There should be supply agreements. What if he produces and decides to just export? There is, the local need that should be met. And it should impact on the price of, petroleum products first, before we talk of exporting. So I think it's a good one for the government. It's like a kind of corporate governance coming to play. It should ensure transparency in the operation of, these refineries. That is the ideal thing. And on the other hand, also, it's really very good if government takes, this stake. It's going to do a lot of good to the stock market. It will deepen the market. At the same time, the all share index will be, impacted positively, and which, it's very good for investors. Maybe that's also one way to encourage the lost foreign private investments, that we're still trying to, offset. So I think it's a good one for the nation that the government is stepping in. We are ensured that at least there will be an agreement. There's a hand of government to ensure that the private entrepreneurs don't take full advantage of Nigeria and the situation. So there will be a kind of control in the whole thing.
Now, Dangote Refinery, of course, is expected to come on stream. That's next year. So, Nigeria has been having issues of petrol, in terms of petrol prices and all. How much of impact do you think Dangote Refinery coming on board is going to have in terms of petrol prices?
Yes, it's supposed to have a huge impact because, like there was a time we discussed here earlier on some months ago. It's one of the largest capacity single train refinery. It's supposed to produce 650,000, liters a day. That's a lot. So we hope and we expect that as, commissioning is supposed to be in January 2022. And as long as, production begins to take place and refining of this crude begins to take place, at least it should impact on the local market immediately, because before you think of, going outside, you should first meet your own domestic, need.
And even now that we're having the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt refinery and, of course, Kaduna and Warri.
Yes. So all that should have a very positive impact on the price of fuel.
What about on smuggling, the issue of smuggling? What impact do you expect that will have?
Smuggling, what will happen to smuggling? What will discourage smuggling is if the reality is allowed to play, like we talked on Tuesday. Smuggling will keep happening on the ground, no matter how you stop, if the market is attractive. But when the invisible hand of the market is allowed to determine and things ease out, and we have the reflection of reality in the oil sector and the oil market of Nigeria, on a good day, smugglers will look elsewhere.
But I believe that by the time Dangote Refinery comes on board and then the Port Harcourt Refinery is working, now they're talking about rehabilitating Warri and Kaduna refineries. If all of these refineries are functioning, then we should be able to produce our petrol in-house, and then we won't be talking about subsidy.
Yes, we won't. Yes, that's why the issue of the removal of the subsidy won't be an issue anymore. And even the foreign exchange bypass of having to import, all these will be out of the question or out of the equation and allow us to have a free flow. And then we can now begin to talk of meeting our domestic need and exporting to earn forex. and boost our reserves.
All right. Talking about reserves, we just talked about the IMF special drawing rights, and for you, how much of impact will this have on our reserves? Of course, and actually our exchange rate. At this point.
Yes, $3.35 billion is a lot. It's a lot. It's a welcome development. At least IMF, their focus is to address the long-standing reserve need of these member countries. Because of the COVID impact, a lot of things were eroded. Many countries have been struggling. So this special, if you notice, the special drawing rights tended towards very poor, 40% was given to very poor economies, emerging markets, those that are very low income, countries. So the aim of IMF is not just to show these reserves, but to also build resilience and sustainability in economic growth based on what is happening now. They expect those economies to bounce back or to resist, not to just be totally overtaken. So for Nigeria, 3.35 is a lot. Presently, we are even, because of the fuel, the trend in oil price, by end of July, we're able to have an accretion of $160 million for the first time against June's 910 million, drop in reserves. So if you notice, we've started coming to a very fairly, favorable place because of, we get our reserves from oil, and oil had been, trending high in the last few months, and it started even affecting our external reserves. In July, we came out of having a depletion to an accretion. So this 3.35 billion also is an added advantage. It should shore up our external reserve. It should strengthen the Naira too. Because
we saw that yesterday the Naira appreciated at the parallel markets. Then one would wonder, what the CBN did last week, after all, didn't really, when everybody expected that, okay, at the BDCs or at the parallel markets, we're going to see the Naira perhaps hitting
700, 800.
Absolutely.
That's the activities of speculators. And a lot of them went into panic buying, hoping that it would go that way. But CBN, they know what they want to do. When I heard the CBN governor reading out numbers to call, if you have an issue in the banks, I knew they meant business. So once people initially tried to process what it meant, and that was why there was that sudden spike a day after. From about 505, it went to 525. But as people began to see that this is like it's something that's workable, people are getting into the bank. And mind you, it's mainly people that are, these invisibles are the area, like these PTAs, BTAs, medicals, school fees, and people that are legally in need of FX. And then you walk into the bank, you get your documentations, in place, and then you come out with money. That is the target of CBN, to ensure that Nigerians that are in need get it. And now that people are seeing that it's working, the speculation is no more there, and then people are beginning to relax, and that's what's affecting the acquisition.
And it did also help that the banks also gave assurance that the public will be able to get dollars.
Yes.
And I believe that also
and they are
helped.
working on it. They are trying to educate people. They are trying to, kind of sensitize us on how possible this is. I think it's very, very good for Nigeria, because you notice there's this trend is been appreciating, and it will keep appreciating. Now, not to talk of this external reserve coming to play, empowering, strengthening the hand of the government to be able to support, foreign exchange activities in the country.
Right.
All right, let's look at the agri-commodity. And we're seeing here sugar price, global sugar price rising. What are the driving factors there?
Sugar's been plagued by so many things. You know that Brazil is the highest exporter, the number one in the world, with about 32 million, metric tons, But now, there has been an issue. First, they were challenged with lack of containers for exporting. That was the first challenge they had. Initially, sugar crushing season, that's the harvest season, was also delayed due to dryness. The weather was extremely dry in Brazil. So they couldn't crush it was meant to be between October and March. And they will start, they'll be ready to export from April and then begin to, down the year. But it came in late. Then, at the same time, soybean, the harvest was delayed. So soybean, Brazil is also a key exporter of soybean. So at the border now, there's congestion. They are struggling to get it out. The cost of moving a ton of sugar from Brazil to China hit up to about $64. So all these things are affecting the price of sugar. And another thing we have to consider in the face of all these issues is the fact that there is the challenge of the COVID, this strain, this Delta, variant that have been affecting these movements. And the fear in the sugar price is what happens if restrictions are put in place to further worsen what is already existing at the borders. So if the restriction is mounted, it will get worse because the restriction they are still dealing with and they've not been able to overcome, the lack of containers had also hindered. Even India took an advantage at a time of the Brazilians' challenge. But they too suffered lack of containers in the first half of 2021. So these things are pushing up the price of sugar in the international markets.
Nigeria is supposed to also be a player in the sugar production, and it's actually a revenue opportunity for us. But how are we doing, in that space, and also with the sugar master plan? How's it looking?
Presently in Nigeria, it's just three major key people now. It's streamlined to Dangote sugar, Boa sugar, and flour mills.
Right.
So, when it becomes a little bit like monopolistic, it's always gives them that power to. But what is happening in the international market is definitely going to affect them. And you know that fast-moving commodity, those commodities that have a very short, shelf life, all these big pastries, confections, and things like drinks, they use sugar a lot. And if it's going to be, costlier to import sugar by reason of what is happening in the international scene, it's going to push up our import bill on sugar. It will affect the price of sugar, and it will affect all these fast-moving commodity, industries in the country.
Now, Nigeria are being with a sugar master plan trying to ensure that we produce enough sugar here. And I think it's also part of the items that were restricted from accessing a foreign exchange. And again, the world is turning their attention to greener energy, looking at ethanol as we produce, which is produced sugar. So one would ask, how can Nigeria actually take advantage of this, particularly looking at the value chain that sugar, gives in terms of production of ethanol?
Yes, I think that efforts should be put by the Nigerian government to increase production of sugar. Support farmers, for instance. Give them subsidies, give them concessions, encourage them to produce sugar. Because you cannot be saying that you want to increase your production and you are importing. And you are supporting imports, you are getting it en masse. If you keep increasing the imports and supporting importation, people will really not sit down and look for a way to actually make it work internally or locally, domestically. If we are out to fully utilize the benefits of what it means to be importers or exporters of sugar, or producing sugar in large quantity, then we should give it all it takes. We should earmark projects and programs that will support farmers, that will give them the best type of seedlings and whatever they need, and all the support to strengthen that aspect and ensure that the production increases.
Okay, take us through the domestic commodity price movements and their drivers.
Okay, for the domestic price, there's been a little, due to seasonality and harvest, a little drop. Like tomatoes experienced about 42% drop from 60.
Wow,
from 60, okay. Yes, from 60% is about 35 now for a 50 kg bag of tomatoes. And also, you notice some decrease in other things like garri that was on 17%. It dropped by 7% to about 15,700 a bag of garri. The rice is still flat on 27%, 27,000 naira. I mean, flour is still on there's a 7% increase in flour to 16,300 naira too. Then beans too experience a little drop in price. So because of harvest, harvest has started coming on and people are beginning to see a little relief in the cost, even in the new yam, even though it's still expensive, but not as bad as what it was earlier. So with harvest and the seasonality in place, the price of, the retail price of local commodities had improved a little bit. And this also agrees with the affix price that dropped by about 5.6% in the week on the review.
Okay, let's have your outlook now for global agricultural commodities and, of course, oil.
Oil. Okay, I still maintain that oil is driven by demand. It's driven by demand. What we should focus more on is how to handle this COVID Delta variant. Let's not forget that the appreciation in oil price we experienced in the last month was out of economic recovery. It was because economies picked up, economic activities increased. That was why we started witnessing an increase in the oil price, because demand increased due to economic activities. So if this Delta variant of the COVID-19 is not curbed, it might still impact negatively on oil supply and pull down the price further.
All right, thank you very much, Juliet. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Jimmy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ladi.
All right, we take a moment. We'll be back.